Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the AdWiseOnline podcast, where we explore how to protect youth from manipulative in-game marketing. My name is Agadzhanova, and I work at European Schoolnet coordinating AdWiseOnline and the Better Internet for Kids, a European Commission initiative to create better and safer digital experiences for children and youth. With AdWiseOnline, we raise awareness about manipulative digital marketing. We empower young people with knowledge about their consumer rights online and provide families and educators with tools to support children in making informed choices online. This year, we place a special focus on the gaming environments, as it's a rapidly evolving industry and a very popular space to be, with more than 50% of young Europeans being engaged into video games to learn, to socialize, and to entertain. However, some games employ persuasive design elements, manipulative techniques such as loot boxes, in-game currencies, pay-to-win schemes, skins, and battle passes. They all have the same incentive to encourage spending, while players sometimes don't realize that it's happening. In this episode, we'll discuss psychology and design behind these techniques. We'll break down risks associated with them and give advice on how to spot and avoid them to truly enjoy the gaming experience. I'm very happy to have for this conversation our guest Anna Fiscaali with me. Anna is a psychologist and she has a PhD focusing on how gaming affects mental well-being. Anna also contributes to the work of the Danish Centre for Digital Youth Care, which is a member of the InSafe network of safe internet centers that we coordinate within the Better Internet for Kids initiative. So, Anna, hello, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Perfect. So let's dive directly into it. And I would like to take a step back and ask you about how gaming platforms design their strategies to keep players engaged and continue spending. So if we could break down how these techniques like reward systems or FOMO, fear of missing out, or loot boxes really work.
Sure. So as you said yourself, different games have different business models. When we are talking about these games where you pay like 70 euros to buy an entire experience, buy an entire service, it's a completely different thing from, for example, free-to-play games, because they are free to play. So they have to generate profit in a different way. So they try to create incentives that speaks to our emotional or even our social investment into that specific game, or even speaks to how much time and effort we put into that game. So they have a wide variety of different tactics and tools in their toolbox to sort of pick out and try to take advantage of, with, for example, something as time or effort. It's really much about, if you'd already spent hours getting to a specific point in a game, and then they put in some kind of insurmountable challenge, or they put in some kind of a challenge where you need to maybe buy more help, buy more boosters, or a specific item to make sure that you can actually overcome this challenge, to not lose everything that you've already built. That's considered an incentive to sort of that speaks to our time and effort we already put into that game. So they are trying to just look at very human nature, and it's a fine line between creating a gaming experience where it's games are fun because they also challenge us. So there has to be some sort of challenge. It has to get harder. That's just the definition of a game, almost. Not the definition, but it's a very integral part of why gaming is fun. But it's also a fine line between the entertainment part and making sure that they have a profit. And that line is quite difficult for young people, especially to really figure out, when is this for my benefit, for my entertainment? When is this actually just a way to make profit?
Hmm. Very interesting. Yeah, I see it's a thin line between this, business model that
Mm.
gaming platforms use. So before we moving forward, can I clarify one point? Is it right to assume that not all marketing practices are manipulative, right? So I'm thinking of in-game ads, for instance, these billboards that pop up in a racing game, for instance, they're out there, but they don't really prompt players to for any action. So I wonder if this is something that we can assume as a healthier marketing practice, or does it also have some hidden strategies?
So when it's an unhealthy or manipulative design, we usually call it a dark pattern. So it's trying to make people do something that they do not want to do. You can have something very overt. For example, if you're playing a free-to-play game and you want to get into a specific level, it's a very hard level. You can have boosters that you can pay for, or you can watch an ad. And if
Hmm.
you watch this ad, if you watch this commercial, you get all the boosters once you start. That is also actually considered a dark pattern because it's making the reward contingent on doing something that's not in your interest.
Hmm.
And while it's very overt in the sense that you have to sometimes watch for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, watch an ad, and it's really boring and it may be annoying and it may be even making you less likely to buy that or to download that specific game. But it's
Hmm.
still a considered a dark pattern
Hmm.
because it goes against your interest. And it's so you can definitely have there's some designs that are more sinister than others. Definitely you would have do you maybe you've tried it. If you play a free to play game, you'll see that there's a countdown once you're watching an ad, and it's counting
Absolutely, yeah.
down 3, 2, 1, yes, and you're about to press it, but then it moves up to the upper corner, so
Hmm.
that's where you have to press to get through to the next page, because if you press down here, that's just going to come, that's going to be a pop-up into the app store where you can
Hmm.
then download it. That's super annoying, but that's more manipulative, and it's more trying to really get you to do something inadvertently. If I
Hmm.
may I give like one more example of a very sinister uh, example of how to manipulate through the emotional and psychological effort we'd already put into it. I don't think anyone plays it anymore, but Farmville was very, very
I remember
popular.
this one.
It was very popular in like the late noughties, the early tens, and it's the thing was that you had to on Facebook, you had to sort of cultivate crops, and you had a farm, you had to take care of it. Once you were sowing crops, it would in real time grow.
Hmm.
That's fine. And you'd have to get back and you'd have to reap it to make sure that everything, your cows are fed, stuff like that. That's fine. The problem was that you'd have to come back within a specific time frame. If you did not come back to reap what you sowed,
Hmm.
then everything would be lost. You would
Hmm.
lose that crop. And creating that kind of incentive where you have to keep in mind that, oh, if I'm not going to lose everything I just did, I have to come back in a specific time frame. And that creates sort of like a pressure in a different way of just going, oh, I want to play right now. I have time, I
Hmm.
have 10 minutes to spare, where it's coming from within. And this is sort of an external pressure onto you as a gamer. So
Hmm.
there can definitely be marketing that's neutral. I mean, marketing is, as a definition, just trying to showcase something for you to buy or to be aware of. It may be in your interest, it may not be. So in that sense, it can be sort of like marketing is trying to make you do something. It can be more or less overt, and it can be more or less manipulative.
Hmm.
So definitely there are examples of just, I mean, marketing in games where you're like, this is an ad. I know what this is. I'm not interested, or I'm
Mhm.
interested, and that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for breaking it down, Anna. I would like to ask you, from psychological standpoint, I would right to assume that children and young people are more likely to be influenced by these techniques. Is it the case? And if so, could you explain how your insights from a psychological point of view?
Sure. In some cases, yes. Just in general, grown-ups are affected by these manipulative takes as well.
Hmm.
It's also, I mean, we also get scammed. Sometimes we also fall into the, I mean, the tricks and the manipulative designs that there are, because
Hmm.
that's
Yeah,
just human
happens.
psychology. It happens. I, for one, have. But for children and young people, what is sometimes different is that their prefrontal cortex, so just the frontal part here of the brain, that handles decision making, it handles planning, it
Hmm.
handles knowing what the consequences are, that isn't fully developed. It makes them more prone to instant gratification. It hinders their impulse control, and it makes it more difficult for young people, for adolescents, for children to know what the consequences are. So
Hmm.
it's difficult in that sense to actually stop yourself. When I say impulse control, and that just means that you have the ability in a situation where you feel the impulse to just click the button of whatever. It's just, it's €2 to buy this. Click it.
Hmm.
They make it very accessible to do that, and very easy to click that button, and the impulse is there to do it. But the control is for you to stop yourself just before you click it.
Hmm.
And that is just so much more difficult for children and for adolescents, because it's about, games are super immersive. They're designed to be, and that's why they are amazing. Games are super, super fun because we can sort of immerse ourselves into a presence, and be present in the game. And that's an amazing opportunity and an amazing way of experiencing something. But it also makes us more prone to, if we're really immersed in something, and if there's a challenge, we've tried 3 times to overcome it, we're still not getting through, and then something prompts us, if you pay like €2, this is going to help, maybe, then we're more likely to just go up and click it. The
Hmm.
impulse control is to sort of stop right there. And that's just more difficult for children and for adolescents.
Hmm. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you for kind of explaining these complex psychological terms into a simple words and simple way. I wanted to ask you, Anne, about the peer pressure.
Mm.
So if we look into, because I can imagine that group aspect and a community aspect is a very powerful aspect in gaming, with multiplayer environments, online communities, etc. So could you break down how social dynamics encourage in-game purchases, and if they encourage in-game purchases?
Mm, sure. I think sometimes when especially grown-ups think of, young people in groups, and how these social dynamics sort of make us more prone to
Hmm.
follow just the group, is sometimes we think of peer pressure. Peer pressure is sometimes that, oh my God, you're such a loser. Why aren't you buying loot boxes? Everybody else does it. That's not necessarily what's going on. What I think is happening is that these designs are just very innate and integral to the way people game today, the way games are made today, and
Hmm.
that make them more. It actually makes it less normal for us to talk about them, because it's such a fluid design. It just makes sense that it's there, and then we forget to talk about what these designs really are, what these microtransactions are, what loot boxes are, and how we deal with them. So for me, I think for young people, it's about culture, and it's about lack of awareness of why we do what we do. So for young people, sometimes it's just entertainment. For some people, loot boxes, for example, loot boxes are a type of entertainment. They're a type of extra excitement. And then you would have items and extra clothes, limited edition stuff that's more about the sort of social and personal representation. It's more about, oh, this is what we think is cool, and it's about showing what you think looks nice. We're using avatars in a completely different way from like 30 years back. It's so much more important now. It's a way of also showing your identity and what you think is cool, and especially within a group that you also look to, because adolescents and children, then they start to look at their peers to figure out, oh, is this more me, or is this, oh, maybe that's okay, I think that's cool, I want to do that instead. So it's about going into that very natural phase, and very natural thing is to look at your peers and do what they do. The problem is the lack of awareness and the lack of consequences. So there is definitely, I think we'll talk about that more later, but it's also about how do we help young people create a culture where spending in gaming isn't necessary at all.
Yeah, very interesting. So, would you say that gaming communities reinforce this pressure, or is it solely driven by game design?
That's a big question, and I think it's difficult to know really. But I think my personal opinion and my what I think is happening is that game communities are super diverse. I mean, more than a third of the world's population game in some way and in some form. So there are a multitude of different communities. So as with any group, whether you're part of a group, whether that's a good or a bad thing, depends on the quality of the group. So you can definitely, as a young person, as an adolescent or as a child, you can definitely be a part of a community that in an unhealthy or in a non-positive way engages in in-game spending, where they are perhaps encouraging it, where there's sort of a culture around it, like, oh, let's open these loot boxes together because it's exciting. And then you could also be a part of a community where you don't do it, or where there's an awareness of, but this is not something we do. So I think there's definitely some truth to that, but I also just think that game design is a massive driver in this, that a lot of these free to play games, they have different kinds of ways to maximize profit and to, I say, take advantage of. If you're a game developer, maybe you're thinking, I'm just, offering an extra experience for people. So there's definitely both sides to this. It's just that these games are designed to in some way make a profit, which in many ways is fair because it's not free to make a game. The problematic thing is when it becomes manipulative and it becomes covert and it becomes sort of a way of taking advantage of an emotional, social,
Yeah.
temporal investment.
Yeah, very interesting. So now that we know a little bit more about game design and psychology behind these tactics, I would like to talk a little bit about consequences and risks associated to these strategies. So I think with the financial part is kind of straightforward. It's clear when families receive bills of the purchases that they were not aware of. So it's clear to have this, to have the to understand the consequences. But I would like to talk about the emotional toll. Is there any evidence in the research that you or in the work that you've done about how exposure to these tactics could potentially develop further developmental issues or further problems? Because I'm thinking of, for example, if there is any evidence on regular exposure to loot box to develop gambling behavior, for example. Do you have any insights on that?
Yeah, a little. It's still quite new, but it's the problem with loot boxes is that they are, in many ways, depending on what definition of gambling that you use, they're very much just like gambling. It's you pay to maybe have minuscule chance of actually getting something of value out of it, but you pay for an experience of tension, excitement, and there's a whole psychological process to that. The thing is, we have a brain that loves to learn, and we learn from unexpected things. So when something unexpected happens, if we receive an unexpected reward, that's when we go, ooh, that was nice. Let's do that again. And this is what happened with loot boxes and with gambling. You know, these just these electronic machines where you go have these like 3 in a row. It's very rapid. It's completely up to chance. You have that thing where you almost get a reward and you think, oh, I'm going to do that again. So that really plays into how children and adolescents are not very big on impulse control. So that's one of the things that's going to be really problematic about it. But we haven't found yet that if you pay for loot boxes, that you will then have a causal link to gambling disorder. So loot boxes in and of themselves do not, right now, we haven't found evidence that they cause gambling disorder, but there is some research to suggest that the earlier you are exposed to gambling, the higher the risk that you develop some kind of problematic spending habits in gambling. So problematic and gambling disorder are two different things. You can be problematic and have a problematic behavior towards gambling and not have gambling disorder, but still it is definitely within the realm of, this is something that, you know, grown-ups have to be aware of and have to have a conversation with young people about, because it's not, I mean, there is a reason why gambling is in general just illegal for children and young people under 18 and 16, depending on which country you're in.
Yeah, thank you. It's a relief that there is no direct correlation. But nevertheless, I think it's quite alarming, the normalization of spendings. And actually, the research has found that on yearly basis, young person can spend up to 170 euros in Europe on that.
Just a quick thing. There is a correlation. There is no causation. So we can see that the ones that have a problematic way of, for example, engaging in loot boxes, they usually also have a problematic spending in other gambling activities. So there is a connection. We just we can't see that one causes the other. So I would so you could look at it in a way of, correlation means that it could also go the other way, that someone who already has a problematic behavior in terms of gambling, they can start playing games and they will go, oh, I have the opportunity for loot boxes, this is amazing, and then they go spend a lot in that. But definitely there is a correlation, but there's no causation that we can find just yet.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Okay, so if we can talk about practical steps, right? Clearly there is an issue, and I would like to know if you have any type of advice to families, to educators, to help young people to prevent falling into these traps and just be more aware when they are gaming online.
Sure. So really, it depends on what kind of grown up around the young people that you are. I think from a parent's perspective, I'm a parent as well, so I'm also thinking about how can I make this into a learning opportunity, and how can I sort of how can I take my child into consideration and be sure to also have my values shine through? So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's a matter of just on the very practical level, will my children have access to money in game? As a general rule, I have my oldest is nearly 6, so it's not really a massive problem yet. But my general rule would be to say that no, they can't have just easy access to money, because game design makes it very, very easy to spend a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But they're more than welcome to come and ask for money from me, because then we can have the conversation. The conversation is the most important thing for
Mm-hmm.
me, to have that conversation of, okay, so you want this much money for what exactly? Okay, why is that? Why is that important? Okay, so this is something you do with your friends and it's important to you. Well, so you have this and this much money during the week or during the month. Do you want to spend everything on this? Because it's not something you can take out of the game, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just about being curious and to take the child's interest seriously, but also to sort of show them just very truthfully that it's okay if you buy something. I'm gonna help you set boundaries, because I'm not, as a parent, gonna allow you to spend all of your pocket money on this, but it's okay to spend some of it, and it's up to you to figure out how to spend that kind of money. This is a learning opportunity to really get to know what spending money means and what you get out of it. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, for example, my son is losing his teeth, so he gets a visit from the tooth fairy. So he
Mm-hmm.
gets physical money. So he gets coins, and recently he was able to buy something for these coins, and that means that he physically can give something and receive something and notice that, okay, this was a transaction. So I'm actually losing something. There's something else that I can't get now.
Yeah.
That's a very important thing. I think for people working with adolescents and children, it's about creating a space where, again, you get to set the values of the room, of the community.
Mm-hmm.
We work with people who say that we work with gaming and we love for young people to come and game with us, but this is not the place to buy loot boxes, and this is not the place to engage in bidding for skins. That is, by the way, illegal, but or skin betting, but it's a way also to have the conversation of, why aren't we doing this here? It's
Mm-hmm.
because we're role models and we don't think that this is a good way to spend money, but we're ready to hear what you say. So I definitely think, as grown-ups, we have a responsibility to set good examples, and to show we act in accordance to the values that we have, but at the same time, we listen to young people. We acknowledge their point of view. We have to listen. They have a right to be heard. They have a right to be protected as well. So we have
Mm-hmm.
to balance those two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing the personal journey as well. And I think it's great to see these examples of the early budget management education. That's something definitely a good tip for families. I think I would also like to take opportunity to say that there are a lot of initiatives and activities and projects in the European Union that provide good tools for educators or families to address these topics, because I can assume that it's not always clear even for parents to know, even to be aware themselves of what's happening online, and then to support their children. So that's why there are a lot of tools, free courses, educational trainings, etc. And Advice Online is actually one of them. We have educational materials developed for different target groups, also for young people, for educators separately, for families to support this type of conversations and navigate gaming environments safely. Um, There are also resources from the European consumer organizations, Safe Internet centers, European consumer centers. So it's just a matter of sourcing this and be curious, as you said, Anna, to kind of be there for your children to support them if needed and raise awareness on the topic. So thank you so much, Anna, for being here and for making yourself available, for sharing your amazing expertise. It was really a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you to our listeners for being with us today. I would like to take this opportunity once again to say that if you are interested in the topic and you want to have conversation going, raise awareness on this matter, and learn more, please visit our website, betterinternetforkids.europa.eu/adviceonline, and stay tuned for the upcoming activities. Thank you so much, and stay safe online, play smart, and spend wisely. Thank you and goodbye.